Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are comedies, dramas, etc. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Chitose is in the Ramune bottle, Season 1, Episode 4. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up in the aftermath. It's probably like the next day after everything went down last episode between Kenta, basically getting on Saku and Yuko's case, because now he looks back on it and remembering what Saku taught him about, you have to learn the difference between people bullying you and people who are lovingly razzing you, kind of busting your balls. And he recognizes what Saku did was just, he's it's so obvious to me now, but he was so caught up in his feelings, and especially at that episode, it was just him constantly fighting that part of himself that wanted to backpedal into being the Kenta he was before and kind of undo the progress he made. I mean, it doesn't help that literally before his blow up to Saku, when he heard them, talking about him, making fun of him, once again in a loving way, all he could think about was what that guy had whispered to him beforehand. So it's he just wasn't in the right mindset. He was just so angry and just angry at himself. And now he's disappointed because he's the person that was actually despite everything, they were by my side through it all. And I just so quickly was dismissive of them, but they gave me the tools necessary to be ready for this day. So it's time for his battle. And so he meets up with his friends and he takes everything that Saku taught him about opening up with a joke, talking about how much he's changed and this and that. And even Miki was kind of caught off guard, oh, you do seem a little different. And we immediately find out how much of a tool those guys are, because he's trying to use all that Saku taught him, and they're making jabs at him and he's playing it off. But all that does in turn is make them resent him more, because they're hey, do you think you're cool or whatever? Miki was almost oh, did you forget about me and yada yada yada? But Kenta was no, I didn't. I wasn't trying to be dismissive or whatever. And it's oh, you're trying to still get with Miki. He's no, I've already moved on. And she's hey, don't even think you had a chance with me. It's stuff like that, and they reveal their true colors. They brought him into their group to make themselves feel better, because maybe other people made them feel small, and so they wanted to feel that power for whatever reason. Who knows what their reasoning is, why they chose Kenta, because it's easier to punch down because it makes you feel better about yourself. Because we find out Miki was never into Kenta at all. The guy, what was his name, Ren, shows the messages. He's me and Miki were already together when you thought you had a chance with her. She wasn't flirting with you just to make me jealous. We were already together. We did that just to make fun of you. I'm that is some next level assholery. Who does something like that? Once again, just to feel better about themselves. And in fact, it's every time you were talking to her and she said something to you, it was actually me. In fact, you might like me more than you like Miki. It's because we had more of a connection, because everything she was responding to you was stuff I suggested that she does. And it's who does that? That's some cruel and evil shit to do to someone that you claim to be your friend. But I guess for him, it's you're a punching bag. You were never our friend. Then it's but it's also because they see they're also doing all this now because they're taking jabs at Kenta, but he's letting it kind of roll off his back and just kind of going with the punches, and they don't like that. It's no, you're a punching bag, take it. Don't act so cool. Don't act like you're above us. So he had to put him in his place by telling him the truth. It's yeah, this is this. And it's yeah, these people were never your friends. For them to do something cruel, and even Kenta realizing the girl who was his first love, it was never real. He never had a shot. She was playing him the entire time and then making fun of him behind his back, being so cruel. And now, because he'd even said oh yeah, I have friends, boys and girls, and they're dismissive. Oh, there's no way anyone would be friends with a loser like you. They must be doing it for brownie points, which is, and even Kenta was right. I said the same thing about Saku and Yuko and them. I had that exact same perspective, and it's just he's seeing so much of himself, and now it probably makes sense why he had the perspective he did. He was surrounded by people who misery loves company, so it's he's with this terrible group of people who feel and think that way, and so it infected him. And so when he was at his lowest, he gave into his worst instincts, the worst aspects about himself, because the people around him give into their worst aspects. So But Kenta realizing, like, I wasted all this time wanting to be friends to show these people how much I changed. And in the process, what did I do? I spit and, like, turned my back on the people who actually were my friends. Like, Saku taught me so much, and what did I do? I betrayed that friendship, and tears welling up in his eyes, and you're just like, damn, you were hopeful that like Saku would show up, and lo and behold, he does, just to make a point, to make Kenta see that he's not alone. And they're looking, and even Miki blushes because she's like captivated by how Saku looks. It's like, yo, good thing for having a handsome friend, and it just shows like, oh, how easily you're swayed. But yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm Kenta's friend, we're classmates, and just making Kenta feel good. And for Kenta, it's like, right, he didn't go into this battle alone. He had part of his support team with him. And obviously Saku does everything he can to kind of tear into like Ren and whatnot, but then they have that whole thing of you better be careful like if you have a girlfriend around, because Kenta is like, oh, he's very stalkerish, and he'll try to like send her unwarranted messages and yada yada yada. But like Saku sees through their bullshit, but then like Ren starts running his mouth off about Kenta and saying all these terrible things about him, and that's like in that moment Saku can't stand it anymore, and he like pushes him against the wall. It's kind of like, you don't get that to talk about my friend like that. The fact is that you're just saying all that because you're upset that Kenta's grown and he's moving forward. He's aiming, he had a goal and he's reaching for that beautiful moon in the sky, while you're still stuck down here, not changing at all. It's like that's what it is. Like that's what, as I said earlier, that's what triggered them, is seeing him seem better off. And it's like, you want to drag people down when you see them kind of get successful. Like, there's two responses. You can either be happy for someone, and I think there's a limit to it, but I think sometimes it's okay to be a little envious and like, oh man, look at what they've got. But when you let that consume you, it brings out the worst, like I said, instincts and aspects of yourself. But yeah, like Saku made a big scene of like, you're not gonna like sit there and make fun of my friend because of the progress he made. And Yuko shows up to kind of like ease the tensions, because she's like, hey, you're supposed to be putting me up against the wall, not some random guy. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Yuko. And he didn't know she was going to be there. But she's like, no, you're not going to handle this alone. And she cuddles up next to Kenta. And even Miki's kind of shocked, because she's looking like, whoa, that's a pretty girl that's by him. It's like, oh, so he wasn't lying. He really does have friends, and one of them is very pretty. And she's probably even thinking like, wait, is that the girl that he's into that makes him so he's not into me anymore, that helped get over me? And then like Saku makes this whole point to Kenta that he was telling Kenta not to waste his time on people like this, kind of almost like these people don't deserve to be your friend. Like you're wasting your breath and wasting your time on them. And also, it's kind of a good thing that your first love with Miki wasn't real, because that means you still have that first time you have ever been in love. Like you still have that. If it was never real, then that means this never really happened. And so you get to keep that cherished first love, and you get to find someone who will actually nurture that and care about it, unlike someone over here manipulating it and using it as a means of entertainment to mess with you. So I just thought that was a beautiful sentiment to give Kenta. And ultimately, before they leave, Saku and Yuko give him the opportunity to like, do you have anything to say? Because for Kenta, he realizes in this moment, seeing how passionately angry Saku got on his behalf, it made him think about like, right, like Saku is someone who gets chastised. He lives his life the way he wants to, unabashedly, and people can think whatever they want to about him, and he just lets it go because he won't like compromise how he wants to live his life, so that other people can feel better about like, whatever the thing is. And it's just like, and this is the guy that actually does care about me. He put forth so much effort to help me over these 3 weeks, and he's getting mad on my behalf, showing like this guy is a true friend. And so ultimately Saku and Kenta makes his declaration to his friends, his former friends, being like, basically, I'm gonna keep walking forward, and he's not going to let this situation hold him back. So when the trio eventually leaves, and I love Kenta's breaking down, being like, oh, like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe you did that for me. They're having their conversation, and Yuko had brought up the fact is that it was kind of neat seeing Saku so angry. And she's like, sometimes it's like best to kind of resolve situations peacefully, but she's like, the most important thing is being able to get mad for a friend shows that what you have is real, and in her mind it also shows like, oh, I got to see a side of you and see how upset about the situation you got. And even Saku had said like he believed that the whole situation was going to work out because he was going to be there to back up Kenta and ensure that everything was going to be okay. And obviously he talks about like, right, this very particular time and how he has this like weird dynamic with Kenta. And so now officially the 3 weeks are up. It's time for them to kind of, end this deal. And Kenta's taking it as like, oh, we can't be friends anymore. But he's like, right, I'm going to take all the lessons you taught me and I'm going to push forward and I'm going to continue to change until like one day I could look at you confidently and ask you and Yuko to be my friends. And then Yuko's like, oh my God, like put him out of his misery. Saku. It's like, all right, Kenta, Saku was messing with you. He purposely knew you would misunderstand this situation. Why would we need to you need to work up to calling us friends? It's like you never bothered, like that was never something that came up anyway. It's like we've organically become friends. Like why continue the student-teacher relationship when we are legitimately friends? That deal is going forward. We just are friends, Because Saku had made this point of basically, if you basically take along every stray you meet along the way, you'll be juggling so much that you can't really be there for those who are the most important, who need you. And, and I think showcasing like Kenta's already in that spot too. He just wasn't aware of it yet. But it's like, yeah, it wasn't just for an arrangement. We have legitimately become friends, And even Kenta's like, right, did you purposely mislead me? And he was like, yeah. Like, once again, like that's me kind of lovingly messing with you. And don't you ever forget it. And he's like, you're such an asshole, Saku. But he's like, I won't. And a beautiful bond of friendship. I thought that was great. So there's that situation. And I'm curious, will that trio ever pop up again? Maybe they will. And even Saku had said, like, this was kind of a lessons for them, that maybe that whole... it might have been kind of like very out there in public, but it was also meant to kind of embarrass them and put them on the spot. So now hopefully they can change and become better people too. And maybe eventually they can change and recognize the error of their ways and they could come back and Kenta and them can actually be friends. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, should he ever go back to being friends with them, even that they changed, considering all the way they joked around and messed with him? But it's like, I don't know. Maybe they can find a way forward. And even if they don't, at the very least, they could be better people to friends that they make in the future or something like that. They never tried to like put someone else in that Kenta position for them to be their joke and punching bag type of thing. Then we have Saku go off and meet with Asuka, and he tells her about everything that went down. It's like, oh, that's such a lovely story. And they're kind of having this interesting conversation about, like, Asuka saying that she's just some ordinary girl, but, like, Saku doesn't... He's like, right, you're the type of girl that, like, goes into the water just to make kids laugh. But she's like, no, I'm not anything special. I do this, I go home. I'm just like any regular girl. Like, I'm nothing special. Because she talks about not being the planning type of person. Because for her, she likes things kind of unplanned, because she's like, if I plan something and then something else comes along the way, I'm going to regret it. So if I leave my schedule open, you kind of let the life take you at its own pace. And so when stuff comes, you take it as it comes. And so it's kind of, in her way, kind of that way you kind of live with no regrets. And it's interesting considering, and I wonder if she's the reason why Saku kind of has that philosophy of living his life beautifully, like living a beautiful life. I'd rather live a beautiful life. If I'm not living a beautiful life, then I might as well be dead. I wonder if having that philosophy is kind of from Asuka, because she seems to be the very, like, certain freedom she has in, like, her just kind of going with the flow of things. But because of her lack of planning, like, we see this moment where, like, her hand is reaching over to Saku's, and Saku's like, well, I was going to ask you out on a date. This older girl asked this older girl out on a date, but, I obviously just got rejected. But it's also playing into, like, Saku keeps his distance because he doesn't want things to kind of change dynamically, even though, like, he is completely aware of how the girls around him feel, but it's him just kind of wanting the freedom of his life, but also not sure, because it's a complicated thing of, yeah, we could be flirtation and this and that, and it's on such a rocky situation, but it's like, I just don't want to compromise what we have. And especially later on when he gets into the conversation about, oh, this being a fake love story. I'll get to that in a second. But I think she's the one that specifically talked about Saku being the way he is. That he presents himself to be this person who only cares about himself, but you are always so warm to those around you and always coldest to yourself. So it sounds like there's a lot of self-deprecating on his part, that like, it almost seems like there, like, for whatever reason he seems to not have love, that he doesn't love himself, and I think, quite a few people, deal with self-esteem issues in that regard. He seems like the most like, confident person, but I think it's a mask he wears, playing the role of the hero and stuff like that. But he doesn't really think of himself as one. But, Asuka was making the point that, like, well, a fake hero kind of wouldn't like go through the troubles that you do for people. So showcasing like the real and true hero that you are. He was suggesting that he was going to play certain music or sing a certain song outside of her window to kind of captivate her. And she was like, oh, that probably would be nice. And that would probably be the start of a beautiful day. But then it was like, never mind. She's almost kind of like, maybe keeping things unplanned is probably for the best. And he's like, oh, you think it would ruin the relationship? And she's kind of like, specifically if they got closer, because they're staying keeping things unplanned, staying the ordinary older girl, and him her the cool older girl, him the cute younger boy. It's like, if things could get ruined if they got closer. She's like, or it could change into something else. So kind of showcasing like, are you willing to take that risk or that chance for things to either fall apart or grow into something else? So then at the end, as the credits are playing, he eventually, he talks about his perspective on love. It's like, when does love first come up? And it's kind of like, basically for him, it's like, it's when, well, he believes it to be like the general consensus. He's like, it is when you first put a word to that name. But the complicated thing is, eventually, like, it's almost like the honeymoon phase fades away, and it becomes a situation of you eventually kind of resent that person, and that word love becomes this blade that you would use against that person who was kind of the initiator. It's like, and I also get that, because like, especially when I was younger, like, because things didn't work out, like, I had when it came to relationships, I had my own insecurities about my part and my fault in it. But I do feel like I also took like, not lashed out, but also like, I feel like I put a lot of blame on significant exes, just because I was just so sad and heartbroken. But it was like, I'm lashing out against the wrong person rather than just kind of like dealing with it myself, and just like, that was my way of dealing with my emotions, and it was not the best way, and it was not the healthy way to take that out on somebody like that. Like, they don't like, but it's like, because I'm the type of person that bottles so much too, so that like does not help. But it's like, putting the blame on someone for a relationship ending is like that, even though it was like a mutual thing, it wasn't their fault, but it was easier to blame them, even though I did blame myself as well. It's a complicated thing. And I think just the notion of like that word of love becoming a sword that you kind of use against someone. I was like, I've done that in the past when I was younger, and I regretted that, and I've always been very careful to never do that again. And so it's interesting where he's kind of like, he believes that type of notion of like, the moment you're feeling that feeling and you give it the word love, it can lead down that path. But for him, he believes in the notion of you and this person battling it out, and kind of like like you getting to know that person, and maybe you'll learn something about them that you won't like, but those feelings in you don't fade away. It's kind of like, get to know the person first. Don't immediately jump the gun to the moment you feel those feelings. Give them time to like grow, learn more about the person, and if those feelings still stand there, even if you learn stuff about them that you don't like, there's some truth to that. And like, I think I'm not explaining it as well as the episode itself does, but I thought that was kind of an interesting notion of love and perspective, especially because he immediately he's on a quote unquote date with Yuzuki, and she's kind of like not dressed up in evening. He's like, oh, shouldn't you dress up if you're meeting with a hot guy? She's like, well, I think you're one of those hot guys that kind of doesn't want like a girl to dress up. And she's like, besides, I can already tell you like you like what I'm wearing. He's like, damn it, she could tell I was checking her out. So him and Yuzuki have like this really interesting flirtatious back and forth, and we saw that showcased last episode as well. Um, Even them having their back and forth about both of them showing up early, and it's because she doesn't like keeping someone waiting because she feels like she owes them or something. And he's like, well, hot guys don't like flawless girls. And she's like, well, in most cases, sure. She's like, but I'm Yuzuki. And he's like, yeah, and I'm Saku. Nice to meet you. And so even the place they're at, it's like, oh, how were you aware of a place like this? She's like, well, I wanted to go somewhere where people we know would less likely be to see us. And it's like, I think it led to the conversation of, because, she's like, I doubt many girls feel comfortable like publicly asking any boys out. And so she's like, because of that favor you owe me from last episode, I'm gonna cash in right now and I want you to be my boyfriend. And in that moment, Saku's like, okay, so I see how this is a fake love story. So interested to see where this goes. I'm assuming this is the next set of episodes, the next arc. For what purpose? Like, I think, is it supposed to be like I don't know if I keep feeling like I'm referencing it, but I don't know if I do. Nisekoi. This reminds me a lot of Nisekoi, which is interesting too, because if I remember correctly, Nisekoi means like fake love, right? I believe so, because that's what started that story. That was kind of built off of like this fake like love / arranged marriage situation between two characters. So it feels like there's kind of something similar happening here, especially with the whole fake love notion and stuff. So the series already gave me Nisekoi vibes, but I can't remember if I brought that up in previous episodes or not. I know I kept thinking, but I don't know if I ever brought it up during recordings. Either way, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes and where this takes us and how the storyline plays out, especially with all the other ladies in his life, how they're going to feel about this. Is Yuzuki going to keep this on the down low? And for what purpose is she doing all this? Is it just for the sake of, I kind of get a leg up in this situation to make you mine? Or does she have ulterior motives for this? And for him to just be like, oh, this is a fake love story, knowing that she's not serious about it. But it's especially like the timing is interesting, because that whole monologue about his perspective on, if you're first to use the word like love immediately rather than kind of taking the time to get to know, it's that whole back and forth. Like I said, I'm not doing it justice of what obviously the show itself did, and I'm paraphrasing and missing a lot of the nuanced, complicated nature of like that comparison between the two different approaches to love that Saku was discussing. So, like I said, I'm interested to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.